Vibe coding, the future of software development.
Quite the title.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Imagine a world where coding isn't about, arcane syntax and endless debugging nights, but rather, well, vibing with an AI.
Sounds almost relaxing. Or maybe a bit superficial.
Exactly. Or perhaps terrifyingly superficial. Welcome to this deep dive. We're going to try and unpack this idea of vibe coding.
Which Andrej Karpathy coined back in 2023, right?
Yeah.
Using natural language prompts to get AI to spit out code.
That's the one. And to figure this out, we've looked at quite a few sources. We've got excerpts from Zencoder's 5 vibe coding best practices.
And a pretty skeptical Reddit thread, hot take, vibe coding is not the future. Always good to get both sides.
Definitely. Then there's a DV community article from someone who actually built an app this way.
Oh, interesting. Real world experience.
Yeah. And another Reddit discussion, this one from Programming, asking if Karpathy's whole movement is maybe harmful.
Strong words. We also have Matana's comparison of vibe coding versus traditional coding.
That the Vibe Coders subreddit, which seems, well, more optimistic.
Naturally. And just various other articles looking at AI-assisted coding and its history.
So our mission today, let's try to cut through the hype. Is vibe coding really the future? Is it a useful tool now? Or is it just, the latest buzzword?
Okay, let's get into it. The core idea, really, across all these sources is this shift, right? Moving away from meticulously writing every line of code towards describing what you want in plain English, basically, and letting an AI handle the translation into actual working code.
Like magic.
Well, not quite. Zencoder's best practices piece really highlights this. They talk about using natural language comments to guide the AI, for things like boilerplate, maybe tests, standard algorithms.
It's repetitive stuff.
Exactly. But the crucial part, according to them, is the prompt itself. It's not just make an app. You need clear, detailed prompts, specifying inputs, outputs, any constraints, the context, like the programming language or framework you're using. It suggests that even if the interface is less technical, you still need a really solid grasp of the software requirements.
So it's a different kind of skill, maybe. Not necessarily easier, just different precision in description rather than syntax.
Precisely. And that DEV community article you mentioned gives a good example.
Yeah, the author built an SEO analyzer app. They started by giving the AI agent a prompt like, help me create an interactive app that displays the SEO tags for any website visually to check they're implemented properly.
Okay, quite specific.
Right. And they didn't get it perfect first time. They started basic and then improved it iteratively with more prompts, like making it mobile friendly later on.
Which does point to that potential for getting something like a version 1.0 out much faster and maybe lowering the barrier to entry for some people.
That's what the folks on the Char Vibe Coders subreddit seem excited about.
Yeah.
The general feeling there is if you can describe it, maybe you can build it. What do you think, listener? Does this actually democratize building software?
It's a really key question. The Vibe Coders community definitely focuses on those upsides. Faster starts, letting people without deep coding skills, maybe designers, business folks, try things out.
Easier experimentation?
Yeah, less time on that standard repetitive code, the boilerplate, as we said. The basic structure you need in almost every app.
But then you look at that other Reddit thread, the hot take. Vibe coding is not the future one.
Yes, the counterpoint.
And they raise some serious concerns. A lot of users worry that relying too much on AI generation leads to a, shallow understanding of what the code is actually doing.
There was that Feynman quote someone mentioned, "What I cannot create, I do not understand."
Right. It makes you wonder, if the AI does most of the heavy lifting based on your description, how much do you really understand? What happens when something breaks deep down?
And what are the long-term consequences of potentially not having that deep knowledge? That's the core issue, I think.
It really is the central tension, isn't it? Are we empowering new creators, or are we maybe raising a generation of developers who can prompt an AI but can't actually debug complex issues or innovate beyond what the AI already knows?
That programming discussion, the one calling Karpathy's movement potentially harmful, dives right into that.
Yeah, the worry seems to be that the apparent ease could discourage learning proper engineering discipline, using AI as a crutch instead of putting in the hard work.
Though some people in that thread did suggest Karpathy maybe meant it more for rapid prototyping or small personal projects, not huge, complex systems.
And the catchy name vibe coding might have taken on a life of its own, perhaps, leading to some misinterpretations of the original idea.
Entirely possible. It boils down to using AI as a tool to help someone who already has skills versus relying on it as a substitute for those skills.
Right.
The Reddit threads definitely voice that fear of creating, well, glorified script kiddies. People
Well,
who can make something look like it works without really getting the fundamentals.
although someone did joke in, I think it was our chat GPT coding, that a lot of good hackers started out as script kiddies.
Huh, maybe so. But the core concern about lacking foundational knowledge is still there, especially for debugging tricky problems, maintaining code over time, or designing genuinely new, complex systems.
Yeah, and someone else pointed out that LLMs, the large language models behind these tools, are great at spitting out code for standard stuff, like CRU apps.
Create, read, update, delete operations, very common.
Right, and maybe common GUI frameworks.
Hmm.
But their effectiveness drops off sharply when you need something really complex or truly original, algorithm-wise.
That brings us to the inherent limits of the current AI models. Several commenters on Reddit made this point forcefully.
That they're basically sophisticated pattern matchers.
Essentially, yeah. They're trained on vast amounts of existing code and text, so they can generate code that looks like code they've seen before that follows established patterns.
But they can't have truly original thoughts, conceptually, like a human can.
That's the argument. As one user put it quite bluntly, something like, it can by definition not create new things, no matter how much marketing Sam Altman puts in it.
Ouch. So the idea is AI helps build typical stuff by remixing patterns, but it's not really inventing. What's your take on that, listener? Is current AI truly creative in a coding sense, or just a very clever mimic?
Well, this lines up with Matana's comparison of vibe coding and traditional coding. They pretty much frame vibe coding as AI-assisted programming.
Just another tool in the toolbox.
Kind of. Their resources talk a lot about the benefits, faster development, boosting productivity. They even cite data, I think, from GitHub Copilot users, showing tasks getting done significantly faster.
That's compelling. Faster is often better in business.
True, but they also acknowledge the challenges. Big ones, like long-term maintainability of AI code. And the risk of building up technical debt if the code isn't reviewed carefully or doesn't follow good standards.
Right, so the need for human oversight and good engineering practices doesn't just vanish. That seems to be a consistent theme, actually, even in the more pro-vibe coding sources.
Absolutely. Zencoder, for instance, while they're giving best practices for using vibe coding, they aren't saying throw out software engineering 101.
Their platform even has features to analyze existing code and suggest fixes, right? Which implies a human still needs to understand and approve things.
Exactly. And even on the enthusiastic RVibe Coders subreddit, you see discussions about how crucial testing AI-generated code is, how you need to debug it, and importantly, know when the AI is going off track and a human needs to step in.
So it's not hands-off development.
Definitely not. The Matana articles really hammer this home. Treat AI code with the same scrutiny as human-written code. Code reviews, solid testing strategies, using automated analysis tools, all still vital.
Trust but verify.
That's the principle they mention. AI is a powerful assistant, maybe, but you always need to check its work critically. They even talk about using static code analysis tools specifically on AI code to catch potential bugs or security issues. Quality control is paramount, no matter the source.
It's interesting to think about how this compares to past tech shifts in software. Matana brought up history, didn't they?
They did. They looked back at the introduction of compilers and also low-code no-code platforms.
And there was skepticism then, too.
Oh, absolutely. In both cases, established developers initially worried about the efficiency, the quality of the output, maybe a loss of control, or losing that deep understanding of the machine level.
Familiar concerns.
Very. But compilers obviously eventually won out because the productivity gains were just undeniable. And low-code code, after maybe some initial overhype, has found its place for specific tasks, augmenting traditional development.
So history suggests these things find their level.
That's the valuable context, yes. The parallels are quite striking. You had assembly programmers wary of higher-level languages and compilers.
And now you have some traditional developers wary of AI code generation.
Exactly. The worries about efficiency, reliability, losing fundamental understanding, they echo those earlier debates. But the success of compilers and the niche found by low-code suggests AI-assisted coding might follow a similar path.
Evolution, not revolution, perhaps.
Could be. The key, as Matana suggests, seems to be managing expectations, focusing on how these tools enhance development, not replace developers entirely.
And the AI models themselves are constantly getting better, right? That has to factor in.
Hugely important. Matana mentioned improvements in models like Claude 3.7 Sonnet and rumors of a ChatGPT 4.5, noting they're getting more accurate with code and can handle much bigger chunks of context.
So the autocomplete on steroids description might be selling them short now.
It might be becoming an understatement, yes. If they keep getting better at understanding complex requirements from natural language, maybe some of those reliability concerns lessen over time.
There was also mention of something called MCP, Machine Code Protocol.
Yeah, hinting at potentially smoother integration between AI and our development tools in the future. More context-aware help, maybe? Better debugging assistance.
So the tech is still evolving rapidly.
Critically so. That evolution really determines where vibe coding lands. If models get genuinely good at complex tasks from natural language prompts, it could become a much more standard part of the workflow.
We saw Claude 3.7 scoring higher on coding benchmarks, handling bigger code bases. That could ease some anxiety about needing constant human correction.
It could. But, and this is the recurring theme, the human elements, the critical review, the rigorous testing, understanding the core principles, those probably aren't going away. They'll likely remain essential for quality, security, and just making sure the software works reliably long term.
Okay, so pulling this all together from our sources, it doesn't really sound like we're heading for a completely codeless future anytime soon, where developers just sort of vaguely vibe and complex apps magically appear.
Seems unlikely based on this.
But AI-assisted coding, maybe vibe coding used smartly, does look like a powerful tool that's still evolving. It could definitely boost productivity, maybe lower the barrier for certain types of projects.
And potentially free up developers to focus on the harder, more creative problems, higher level design and innovation.
Yeah. So the main takeaway seems to be about balance. Embrace the AI's power as an assistant, but don't ditch the fundamental engineering discipline. Clear requirements, thorough testing, code reviews, and actually understanding the code itself.
Exactly. The consensus points towards a future of human-AI collaboration. Developers learn to talk effectively to AI assistants via prompts, sure, but they still need the critical thinking to evaluate, test, and maintain the output.
We saw mentions of new roles emerging too, like AI-first developers or prompt engineers on our vibe coders.
Right, the professional landscape might shift. Vibe coding, in that sense, becomes another skill translating human intent effectively for an AI. But those foundational engineering principles, the need for testing, understanding architecture, they seem pretty non-negotiable.
So are we on the cusp of a codeless utopia? Or are we maybe just handing over the keys to a complex black box, hoping for the best? Perhaps the real code we need to understand isn't Python or JavaScript, but this evolving relationship between human intent and artificial intelligence.
A provocative thought to end on.
Thank you very much for listening. Leave a like and subscribe. Until next time.